Daniel, thank you so much for making time to be with me today. I'm excited to kind of get into your origin story. As I said, I'm talking with founders and people who've decided to hang their own shingle and get out on their own, and just want to know more about that journey, especially around, what made you decide to go on your own from maybe being in corporate America, or, that shift that you went through is really what I want to dig into, and the lessons learned over the last couple of years of doing your own thing. So welcome.
Yeah, happy to share.
Good. All right. Well, tell me a little bit about your backstory. Like what led you to really making that leap from, maybe working in corporate America to doing your own thing, and we can kind of dig into that a little bit.
Well, I sort of found myself in a consulting role even when I wasn't in a consulting role. And so I had my background is large call center, so very process driven, and leading a large group, a global group. It sounds sexier than it is because the travel stinks and all of that. But you really have to build systems that can communicate across cultures and different things like that. So I got very familiar with SaaS software, excuse me, and building those things, and then moved into a Fortune 100 company, so a really large company. Oh. And I owned SaaS products. Excuse me, you can cut that part out.
Okay.
I owned SaaS products in 80 different markets, so they have to adjust to different cultures and different things like that. Not what you would need to do in the US centric market, but you still have to account for certain user requirements and all that. So I got really good at the details. And then ended up breaking out into 3 different startup organizations, which felt a lot like consulting because it was building it from the ground up.
Yeah.
And what I recognized in that, and each one has an exit event. The strategy, let me back up a little bit. I talked to a lot of folks that are out of work in the customer success space, and they're looking for their next job, and they really want that one to be the long-term job. And I got to tell you guys, it's not technology in the United States right now, because those are short-term jobs. And by short-term, I mean maybe 5 years is a really long time. So you're not going to find your next lifetime job. That just doesn't exist in this space. And so what I found myself doing was coming in, and I had a really low, a very high tolerance for risk, I guess I would say. I was just, if the worst the problem is, what's the worst you could do? It was heading for the ground at the time. In there, if you could fix it,
you just skid along the ground and bounce back up. Right. That's a win.
So I would take those things on, and inevitably there'd be an exit. I'd either get paid a lot or a little, and then you move to the next one and the next one. And so after the third one, I started seeing completely different verticals, totally different industries. The patterns were the same. Everyone has a unique approach to the market, to their space, to their thing, and it's got little cogs and special, and it's very unique. But the systems that support it, like sales, marketing, and customer success after post sale, those things don't change. Those things are 80% are very, very similar, and people are approaching it all different ways. And so I recognized that in the 3 startups I worked at. So I had an exit event, had a little bit of cash, and dove into building some standards around customer success. So I had at least a platform to base some of the decisions on.
Okay, awesome. That's an amazing kind of step up, I guess, confidence builder. I mean, did you ever have the moment where, like, when you finally decided to, like, okay, I'm doing my own thing? Was there, imposter syndrome? Did you feel pretty confident? Were you like, oh my God, now what? Or, what were some of the feelings you were going through? Was it scary? Were you excited? Were you like, I got this?
Yeah, I will say I mentioned maybe to you before that I made $11,000 in 2020 when I first started. Tough year anyway with COVID and all of that, but you can't start from nothing. You have to have a little bit of it. You have to have your food money. Right? So at least you have a roof over your head, you have some shelter. So I did okay from a couple of exits, so that really wasn't a question. And then it's just a question of scaling. And I knew what I had was really good because I'd done it before. It wasn't just some concept I had dreamed up. But starting the marketing engine, starting the approach, and building all of that is pretty difficult. The easiest thing to do in that situation is to spend money, especially if you have some money. So then you want to buy a website, you want to buy a CRM, you want to buy, and you know what? Don't do that until you need it. There's so many people that tried to pitch me invoicing solutions. when I have too many invoices that I can't count,
Yeah, that is the problem that you want to
there's
have.
no reason to buy that now. And I won't be
Yeah.
too busy to implement your invoicing solution when I have a bunch of invoices. I'll figure it out.
Yeah. Well, I think that shared insight right there, I've heard that from at least 5 of the people that I've talked to now doing this. And it's, get the business, and then, don't build the infrastructure to get the business. Go get the business, solve the problem, have the problem of, okay, now I have too many invoices to manually send out each month. So that's really, really good. So it sounded like, because of your past experience, being able to kind of do and getting to that mindset early, which I think is I am definitely seeing that shift too, where it's, again, back to my question here, is we are definitely seeing that having a job for 5, 7, 10 years is just not the norm anymore. Things are changing so fast. Exits happen a lot more quickly, or roll-ups and then downsizing. So it is becoming much more normal now for people to be at a place for just a couple of years, and then you're either forced to go look for a new startup or a new enterprise or something like that. So do you think that was because of that experience, it was much easier for you to kind of just start down that path?
Yes. Essentially that's what I was doing when I was a W-2 employee or getting paid at a 1099. And so I kept seeing some very common trends. So it's not so much that you go into the company, you do your thing today. And I'm just using it based on customer success leaders that I speak with. Yeah. And what typically happens there is, if it's an early stage startup, they hire the best person they can for marketing, the best person they can for sales. And then they're like, oh, you're good with customers. Yeah, you've been here.
Yeah, we'll promote you.
We'll just put you on this customer success thing. Yeah, just make it work. Well, this person devolves. It's a very common thing. They devolve into customer support. They're helping customers, and they can't tell the story. They can't do all this. So I'm setting this up to the biggest reason I see that turnover is scale. You're a different company. It steps up. Like you're fine until they're not. And then the company's all of a sudden too big, and you have to have systems in place. Well, you were too busy dealing with customers. So then they either hire someone over the top, which is about 20% of the time, or you get let go and they hire someone with more experience. And then 2 or 3 years later, the same thing happens to that person. And you just see that in every LinkedIn profile you look at. It's from place to place, and they aren't always promotions. Usually, okay, go back to a smaller company and build it up, and then this is my peak, and go back to a smaller company. So I built these standards that are scalable with size. So if you're a big company, if you're a small company, you don't need the things you need as a big company. But what you do want to do is build those things that don't conflict with the things you will need later. And that sounds obvious, but it's really hard to execute. When you get into the tactical execution of that, you're always second guessing, well, I need this now, but what's that going to be tomorrow? If you don't have this set of standards to rely on, you're guessing and you hope it's right. And if it's wrong, then somebody's going to be hired in over the top of you 20% of the time, or they're going to let you go 80% of the time.
No, and I think that insight that I know I've read a few things that you've shared, and I think that insight is so powerful, because it is typically that tipping point for someone coming in who maybe knows a little bit about CS, but again, maybe not enough to think about customer experience across the whole revenue customer journey within the organization. And then they got sucked into the firefight, the dumpster fires, and they're just pulled into support. And it's unfortunate because, if you don't have that foundation to give the voice, to elevate that experience, man. Well, back to the next question is, I want to ask, what was the biggest kind of learning insight for you kind of in that first few years? You said you had your first year where it's like, man, I only made $11,000. So, what were some of the lessons learned where you're like, man, I wish I would have done that sooner, or maybe you were like, I knew it was going to take 3 years. Yeah. What are some of that personal changes that you embraced that has made you the awesome entrepreneur you are today?
Well, setting up the definitions, and either hiring somebody for the structure, like setting up your marketing, which your ideal customer profile, all of those kinds of things, just your message, your core message, and things like that weren't, we can all read a textbook, but they're not intuitive. there are several products out there that, that have ongoing iterations on how to build a business like that, and they're not overly expensive. So I ended up doing that, walking through the process, and that took quite a bit of time to really hone and shape the message. The other thing I learned, though, and I guess I knew this from my experience, but I guess maybe validated. You mentioned the dumpster fire. The truth is, it's always a dump. It's just a matter of degrees of the fire and how big the dumpster is, because it's when you're behind the scenes, behind the pitch is often shiny. There's no cracks in it because they've honed it.
Yes.
Everything below that is just a version of a dumpster fire. You got to figure that out. And it's surprising how simple some of the things are, which led me to a branch off of my product, but you can't see it when you're in it. And I have a conversation. I have 5 older brothers, and my oldest brother is 13 years older than me. And he and I have great business conversations, because when you're in it, you can't see it. And he tells me things that I should easily know, and I tell him things that he's told me, but they apply to him. And you just see it when you're in it. And the description is, you just can't read the label when you're inside the bottle, because it's murky and it's backwards.
I love that.
So,
I love that.
But nobody recognizes it when they're in there.
Yeah.
And then you get a breath of fresh air when you get somebody from the outside that can clarify it for you.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's people that could do the same for me if our situations were in reverse. So it's not this, master servant relationship. It's peer to peer, but it's just you're in the place to see it. That's the value of consulting. And so I used to really dislike consulting, and I think it's more big box consulting that I dislike. The guys that roll in with a fancy report that just collects dust. We've all been through that a couple of times. Yeah. So I really tailored my product, my service, really to get into the tactical execution. You've got something that you have at the end that's not a report to go do, but you actually have something you can point to that you've done.
Awesome. That's great. Yeah, I know. I love that. You can't read the label when you're inside the bottle. I think, having your, I don't know, I call them your kind of A team around you that you can lean on, you can ask questions, you can validate. And because especially as a solo entrepreneur, it can get kind of lonely. It can get a little bit isolating. And I know when I stepped into my first CEO role, I was like, I kind of forgot everything. I don't know. I was like so running around trying to juggle everything, all the departments, all the needs, and the PE firm and the board meetings. And I kind of forgot some of the basics of like, man, I got to run the business. But I got to delegate, and I need to be visioning out 6 to 12 months. And, sometimes it's just, you needed someone to slap you in the back of the head and go, you should be doing this, or that's a dumb quit, or, just someone to bounce ideas off. So I think that's great.
It is so impossible at the CEO level. It's so impossible because you can't talk to the board and you can't talk to subordinates. You have to, and so
it's very, very lonely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you do need an outside source for sure.
But even below that, though, as customer success, you come in as the expert. Say that's that person in the mid tier. They're brought in as the expert, and then all of a sudden it starts to get out of reach, and you start missing a few things, and all of a sudden it's like too big to do the way you used to do it. Well, who do you talk to? You can't talk up and you can't talk down. So everybody needs that sounding board. And,
I think that I've really found like the last, 4 or 5 months, like the connecting with the right people in LinkedIn and the community you can build and the community groups and some, places where you can ask questions and get help. Some of that is really valuable. Just to have that. And then I think everybody has their mentor that they've, I still pick up the phone and go, boss, my old boss from like 5 companies ago, like, man, I'm having this issue. And he's like, he always just gives me the ration of shit. But he's always got an angle that I can't see, like exactly what you're saying. So I guess, Daniel, how do you stay motivated and keep yourself excited and, have your purpose to get out of bed every morning? How do you kind of build that momentum for yourself to be, attaboying yourself to get things going?
Yeah, for me, and I've been fortunate to have a lot of work to do in the last, 3 or 4 years where you almost have constituents you can't let down. Yeah. It's not about the money. It's not about being hungry or it's any of that. It's that have constituents or people that you're helping that you can't let down. And so without that, it becomes very difficult. If it's just you and you're out there selling something for you, that's difficult to be motivated into. But if you have clients that have problems, you sort of have it's a bit of servant leadership, I suppose, with the more current term now, but you sort of can't let them down. You know what I mean? So you have some of that. And I think it's also helpful to have either accountability partner or someone that in the marketing space or whatever, when you are chasing customers instead of getting paid by them, that's the hard part, to stay motivated. And it's important to either get an accountability coach or somebody like that. A board is a strong word for a solo entrepreneur like me, but someone that fills that role,
Yeah, that can give you that the honest coaching and mentoring or feedback you need. What's some of the like the biggest myth that being whether a founder, solo entrepreneur, what are some of the biggest myths or surprises that you've come across just in your time now as a?
It really depends on what you're talking about. One is the myth of being your own boss gives you the flexibility to do what you want. It does not. So now when you take vacations, you have to consider the cost of what you're taking and the revenue you're going to lose as part of it when you are the service, right? So it's actually a lot less flexibility. Maybe it feels more flexible because you're doing the work you choose to do, but not really. But the other side of that is everyone works on commission, whether you know it or not. Your commission is different. If you get paid every week, that's a commission to provide something. And if you stop providing it, sooner or later, that commission is going to run out, So anyway, there's that, and that's more philosophical. What was your question?
Just the myths of being a founder or
So I'll tell you some of the myths in the space, and this is more about customer success. So when like certain things, and these may sound very tactical, but people spend a lot of money on them, like health scores. The myth in this space is you can have this perfect health score that works, that's like human anatomy or the blood test or something like that. And it just doesn't work that way. It does if you're $1 billion company, like with a capital B, and you've got millions to spend on, and you've hundreds of thousands of customers churning through, then you can make that work, but it takes years to get right. And I see so many, I've never seen one that's good at the companies I deal with, which is usually under 100 million. Nobody has time to iterate them, and they're full of false positives. So everyone's chasing this number that doesn't mean anything. And so you have to get very tactical with that stuff. So that's one myth in the space. The other one is onboarding. These separate onboarding teams that just do onboarding is very cumbersome. So we have standards around onboarding, whether you would want to do that or not do that. It's more expensive to do it that way. You lose control. So there's a lot of myths, I think, in the space. Journey mapping and all that stuff's important, the buzzwords, but tactically it comes down to how you execute these things. And that's where I sort of carved out a spot for me where the tactical execution is pretty critical.
I think that I've always had success similarly in breaking down the moments, the friction, and keep it as simple as possible, because if you can't do 2 or 3 of the things well, you're not going to do the 45-step journey mapping and the big gain site deployment on top of your already cumbersome CRM. I mean, you're adding complexity that, most of the time it's pick up the phone, talk to your customers, ask them what value is, and knock their socks off, right?
And you bring up a good point when you say gain site. So I have yet to see a company, and I've not done thousands, but I've done dozens and dozens of companies and literally hundreds of customer success leaders. And the churn zeros, the gain site, I'm not sure why those guys are still in business. This may be sacrilegious to say this, or blasphemy, or whatever it is in the space, but they're a CRM. And when I implement stuff, I implement it in the CRM because the handoffs are really tricky and you can't get that data to sync right. It's really difficult. So I just haven't seen a need for those ancillary systems. You can build it in HubSpot, you can build it in Salesforce, and they're coming towards these guys while these guys are trying to become a CRM. And you're not going to beat HubSpot or Salesforce. So I'm not sure how Gainsight,
No.
Insurance Zero, Tango, all those guys are surviving, but you don't need them. That's another
Yeah,
myth.
no, I agreed. I mean, I think, again, going back to what are you actually tracking, and what do you need to track? And is it really it's the insight of trying to understand the true problem you're solving for your customer around the value that you're actually delivering. And it's that storytelling, that messaging, being there when needed. And the more tracking, I mean, I feel the same way. I mean, I wish there was a magic easy button that was like, I'm going to predict 90 days out who's going to churn and like how healthy they are and happy. And, it's all this stuff that we've layered on. I think there is. Well, let me ask you this question, and then we'll wrap this up. But with the impact of AI, and I think there's this shift that's happening with the review of tech stack, like within an organization. And I've done this a few times with the companies that I've been at, and it's just amazing when you go, well, let's do a full audit of actually when you get to a larger company, 60, 70, 100 people, it's amazing how much tech's gotten just purchased by so-and-so, but they left, and you keep paying it because somebody thought, and you end up having 150 different applications across all your company. And then, but what are you actually using, the adoption? And when you look at things like Gainsight, the people that I've talked to, they're like, oh, we love maybe 30% of the functionality. Like, okay, well, it's not cheap to do Gainsight or Tango and, Trendera and all this stuff. And then on top of that, you're paying for your CRM. So what's your take with maybe the way companies are going to be looking at their tech stack and AI? And is it a time to downsize and focus on maybe the moments that matter a little bit more versus, this behemoth that we've kind of built ourselves?
Yeah, I'm going to be honest, and I can't tell if I'm the old guy in the room when I say I'm not sure that AI works at the size of company that I deal with. It works. Let me back up. I use it every day. You probably use it every day. We use it for a lot of different things. But in terms of getting your base level data and defining structured data versus this free form text and all of the elements that I go through when I do consulting practice, and it's the same thing I would do if I got a new job at some place. I would still do those same evaluation techniques. And you still have to have some base level of data. So I believe in my head, I'm not certain of this is opinion, but things like finance that are structured, and you have to know where this number comes from, and it has to be that number that means that thing. you know what it is. Those numbers can all get pulled in, so it should help the finance function. It should help us forecasting and certain things like that. But in terms of getting in and looking at hard risks or tangible data or getting to root cause churn reasons, that's another one that is universally wrong in every company I've ever gone into, and almost every company that I've ever even prospected. We don't have reasons why, we don't have root cause reasons why people left, and AI can't really help you with that. And they can interpret speech, it can do some of those things, but I have not found a way to have it help me when I download a large group of data and have to go through and interpret what the things mean. So there is I'll know in a couple of years if I was right or wrong on that.
Well, no, it's been interesting because I've spent almost 8 years at a BI company, and we were embedding our application into other people's software, and it still came down to the data quality within an organization and how you organize what it is you're actually capturing. Not then you figure out what are you going to actually look at. But that's the same problem today. It's funny you bring up the finance side, right? There's really strict rules. You got your balance sheet and everything kind of has got a balance. It's almost we need the data balance sheet to be able to really make sure, just because you can capture so much data, it doesn't mean you need to. And it's not knowing the basics of like, what are we actually tracking? Why? I know there's like simple little steps across the customer revenue journey that you can measure and put people's awesome energy and purpose and value around engaging with customers in the right way to drive the success you want. So, all right.
I'll give you an example. When I do a real quick example, when I go in and I'll do interviews with a lot of people across the organization, and I can tell instantly when somebody says something, I don't believe they're lying to me. I just believe they wish it were true and that's the way it should work. but it's not
Yeah.
really the way it actually works. So I can find those problems by just doing several interviews with people, and they tell me how it works. Oftentimes people in the same role say very different things about the same thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And so then you go in and start figuring out, and nothing validates what was said over here. And so those are problems that need to fix. Those are like execution gaps. You think you're doing this, but you're actually doing this. And so a consultant can't come in and say, oh, you're doing it that way because you told me you were doing it that way. Well, you should do it this way. Well, those execution gaps are still there, and people don't recognize them. And it's two jobs. Like, it's the one job is dealing with customers, your company, and all that stuff. And the other is the infrastructure of building this stuff out. This one's temporary because once you build it out, you don't need to keep building it. But you need that extra layer, that second job. And that's a really tough thing for companies to think, well, I just spent X on hiring this customer success leader. They should just magically fix it. They don't know to ask for these other things either, right? So it's kind of a challenging spot. And it depends on the level of the leader as well. But
no, and I think you probably understand this as well, right? I mean, just hiring a CS leader and thinking they're going to fix they're going to fix the overall problem within the organization, within a siloed department, without the support of changing the customer centricity purpose within an organization you're just going to be letting that person go. And it's unfortunate. They're going to probably be burned out and, within 12 months, because you thought they were going to reduce your churn by 15% magically. Right.
Well, yeah. And plus you spent some version of 6 figures on it, fully loaded, whatever. And so you think, oh, problem solved, checkbox, because I spent money and I threw it at this person. That's really not the best return on your investment. Hiring another employee for a lot of money,
right?
And
the turnover cost.
Right? So anyway, there's a whole podcast to talk about that. I'm
sure. We'll have to have another one just on CS simplicity and the process of actually supporting and hiring the right people to drive that change. But look, let me hit you with the last question here.
Sure.
You're sitting down with an individual. They want to go and start their own consultancy. What advice would you give to that individual who wants to be their own solo entrepreneur?
Yeah, get really granular on the problem you're solving and who you're solving it for, and then go out and pretend you're that person and find how you would solve that problem. Because there's AI searches, there's Google now is an AI search with it. There's a lot of ways you can go find different products and just find out how other people approach that. It's hard to do that research because it's going to say it might tell you no on a thing you don't want to hear no on. but you have to do that research, and it's very specific on the problem you're solving and who you're solving it for, and then go out, find out how many of those people are there and where would they go for help. And if it's a super crowded market space, it's pretty tough to carve out your little space in there. And you may have a new wrinkle, but then test it a couple times. You got to give your stuff away, and you got to just figure that out before you go spend a bunch of money on your invoicing solution.
Right. Your website and thing. That's a great share, and very much what I'm hearing from some of the other people I've talked to is get really good at understanding what you're good at, and then the problem you actually can solve. And you might, it's really hard, I think, to hone in on sometimes for people, like, what am I good at? I do everything well. No. Yeah.
That's so true. And then you do nothing. And so you can't, no one wants to hire a really good generalist.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter, because if you don't do the thing I need done, I feel like I'm overpaying for that other stuff.
Yeah.
So it really is a challenge there.
Yeah, your value purpose. So, all right, Jen. Well, look, this has been great, and man, I do definitely want to do another set of maybe another podcast with you on some of the CS things we could unwind for people.
Yeah.
But so, if people want to work with you or get to know you or follow you, where's the best place to connect with you?
LinkedIn. I post 2 or 3 times a week on LinkedIn. I have a website, Predictive Customer Behavior Index, Predictive Customer Success. And I even have a YouTube channel. You can follow some of the stuff there. So LinkedIn's probably the best. And that's where, it's easy to contact me, and we'll go from there. I have a discovery process where we talk through different things that are real proxy questions for, if this thing happens and it doesn't happen the right way, you probably need some help. If this thing happens and it happens the wrong way, then you probably need some help. It's we can set up 30 minutes and chat about that. And everything I do is also money back guarantee. It sounds like a too good to believe hoax that you throw out there online, but the reality is it keeps me fresh and it keeps me, honest in the work that I do. And, that's never been a discussion with any customer I've had. So anyway, happy to talk to anybody. And most of the time I'm talking, I'm offering free advice. I don't have a product that fits everybody's needs. So, if I can help people, that's just good karma I put back in the world, really.
Awesome, Daniel. Well, thank you for the time today. It's been great to hear more about your journey and more about you and what you're doing. And so I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Catch you later, Lee.
Okay. Thank you.